Thanks for listening to our podcast, Living Life with the Rogers. My name is Cameron.
And I'm Kira, and this is a lifestyle podcast where we talk about hashtag all the things. Listen in.
Hello, listeners, and thanks for tuning in to another fun podcast of Living Life with the Rogers.
Hello.
All right, well, confirmed Kira is present. Let's do roll call. Is Kira here?
Yes, barely.
Is baby Delaney here?
Barely. She's doing what I want to be doing right now, sleeping.
And is Cameron here? Aye. All right, so we got all three of us present and here with you today. Today's going to be a fun one. We're going to learn how to do something that makes us a little uncomfortable, unless your name is Kira and you just were naturally gifted at this.
I just offend people and don't even think twice about it.
So would you like to share with our listeners what you just are naturally gifted at?
Saying no. No, no, no.
So she's really good. So if I'm like, hey, I really need sleep tonight, can you take Delaney's shift? What do you say?
Nope.
And I'm like, I don't want to keep going along with that, but
Yeah, what else do I say no to?
Let's see. Can I get a back scratch?
Nope.
Let's see. Can I go out, I don't know, and play 18 rounds of golf?
You don't even play golf, but if you did, nope.
So podcast over. Just live like Kira does, and you will have so much free time. Thank you for listening.
I do say yes to spending money on the credit card and going to the gym and going to get my nails done. That's about it. Oh, and eating out.
So yes to bankruptcy, no to anything else.
Exactly.
So it's kind of a hot topic. It can be a hot topic with everybody, but in the Christian culture, there's a lot of this, we need to invest in people.
Serve.
Yes. Yeah, serve till you die and give everything that you own and never say no. And so we'd love to speak into that, speak some truth into that, some things that we've learned over our short life, and bless you guys with some of our failures.
Yeah, because we are people who like to be busy and always, doing something, working on a project, making progress on a goal. We're kind of like overachievers. I guess you could put us in that category. It was hard. It's been hard for us to say no, and we hit burnout so many times where we were like, okay, well, guess we're going to learn how to say no, because we can keep living our life this way, but our health is going to suffer, our marriage is going to suffer, our family's going to suffer, our overall happiness and well-being as people is going to suffer. So we have learned to say no. And it even comes down to too, like my business. Like I was like insecure at first because people would be like, oh, how many weddings are you shooting? And I'd be like, oh, like 15, 20. And I felt like my business wasn't successful because most of my photographer friends that are full-time and, it's like their main gig, their main income, they're shooting like 30 weddings, 35. So I would always feel like, oh, well, you just can't book that many weddings, when I would say I only shoot 15 or 20. When the reality is, no, I was saying no on purpose because I didn't want to be gone every weekend. I wanted to be able to be at some of my daughter's soccer games, be with my family at least 1 or 2 times a month on the weekends, because obviously my job is done nights, weekends when my kids are home. So there can be some insecurities for sure with saying no.
Well, same thing with, I have a small business as well. And so in this, basically in society, we want to prove that we're busy, successful, all that kind of stuff. And that's what you're speaking to is, we run ourselves dry. We try to prove a point to other people how busy we are, and it just leaves us feeling empty. And I'll go back to an actual scenario of when I was serving in a church, and you called me out on it. I thought I was doing all the right stuff. I was serving a church, meeting up with people, leading Bible studies. And I remember you saying one time, like, we just never have time together. You're gone all the time. You're leaving your family. And we're stuck high and dry while you're attending to everybody else's needs. And it was like, bam, just slammed me like a sack of bricks hit me in the face. It was very convicting because I was thinking, I'm doing all the right stuff, saying yes to all the right things. In all reality, it was completely wrong. If I'm leaving my family high and dry, then who cares I don't care how positive it sounds. It's just not what God's going to call us to do.
And sometimes our motives get like twisted because it's not, sometimes we don't even like go in with the intention of, oh, I'm going to not spend enough time with people I love, or I'm going to not take care of the people that I love. Because like I'm thinking with your job, like when you transitioned to work fields and you went into construction, you were working really long days, and I was always kind of like, oh, I think this is a little much, but you were trying to provide for the family. So, you were thinking, oh, this is good for me to be gone so much and doing so, saying yes to this and working these long days. So it wasn't necessarily that you went in with a bad intention, but if we're not careful, then we are striving for the wrong reasons, and kind of just our motives just get a little bit tangled up, and we kind of have to do like a gut check and say like, why do I keep saying yes to this? And that kind of plays into, I think there's another point to be made here about kind of feeling like self-worth. You're kind of what I was saying in the beginning is like, you have to have really good like self-worth to not be just saying yes to everything and everyone, because you when you say no, it makes you feel insecure, like you're not enough. Like, I can't do this. This makes me feel not enough. And so I think, you really have to like kind of dig within and say, do it. Like, how do I value myself? Like, what do I think of myself? Like, where does my validation and my affirmation come from? Because if not, I think you kind of just get a little tangled up in things that you probably shouldn't be doing.
So that leads us to the opposite point of, why do we always say yes? And I think there's two big reasons why. One of them is guilt or shame. And this other point's kind of the same thing. You're a people pleaser, and I'm a huge people pleaser. And I grew up in the church. I've heard so many sermons, so many messages about serving people, taking care of others, and do unto others as you would have them do to you. And so you feel this conviction to look out for everybody. But what ends up happening is exactly, Kiera, what you said, is I'm busy looking out for everybody, and I'm not taking care of myself, and I'm not taking care of my highest priority, which is my family.
Yeah, I wish in the church, like, we talked more about, like, order of priorities. Like, I wish there was, like, emphasis on, like, well, are you taking care of yourself first? Because how the heck are you supposed to take care of everybody else if you're not, like, functioning in a healthy way? And like, what do you have to offer, if you're pulling from an empty well? And then also, like, God gave you your family and like your spouse, like your immediate circle first. So like, why don't we make sure that those people are thriving? They're getting the attention they need. They're getting the help, whatever they need in order to be thriving. And then it's like, okay, you know what? If you feel like you have a little bit of capacity left, you have a little bit more to give, then that's when you kind of go to your neighbors, your extended family, your people at school, and it's like, but I just feel like we talked more about like kind of looking at the whole pie and seeing like, well, let's make sure that the inner circle, I feel like this happens with pastor kids a lot. Like the pastors are so preoccupied with everybody, because, people come to you and they're like, everyone's need is so urgent. It's like, they need you. And it's like, then the kids get kind of like, oh, well, the kids are fine. They'll figure it out. They'll play with their friends, or they'll go hang out with that family or whatever. But it's like, really what they're craving is some love and attention from their parent. And it's just a shame that he's too busy taking care of everybody else's needs. And then, then you hear these stories of like all these pastor kids like going off the rails or getting into, doing whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, because they didn't get the love and the attention and the affirmation that they needed from their parents. So I don't know. I just feel like that can get a little like jacked up in the church sometimes.
Well, the devil loves us to be busybodies, because then we lose our health, we lose our sanity, we are a shell of ourselves. And he loves to work on people that are naturally people pleasers, or people that are holding on to guilt or shame. And so for me, I'll speak to myself. I was a huge people pleaser, and it came from an insecurity. I didn't value myself that much. I didn't think highly of myself. I honestly, kind of to some degree, it sounds harsh, I hated myself. And so I had to work on that. And this took like years of counseling, really trying to understand what God thought of me, and replacing my own negative, toxic thoughts with how God saw me. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long, 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 long time. Is in a continual healing process I have to go through. But what that did is once I worked through that insecurity, and I remember one of the first times, somebody came up to me, I really need this, and you know what? It didn't work with my schedule, and I had to say no. And I don't even think I even said the word no. I just like, well, I mean, I just, I beat around the bush. So it made me, I mean, my nerves, I'd rather probably get like 5 teeth drilled than to say no. And I know there's a lot of people out there that can sympathize with me. And then I know there's a lot of people out there that are like on Kira's side of things where they're like, dude, just say no, get over yourself. And so if you're one of those people, God bless you. If you're like me and you lack a little confidence and you haven't taken the time to dig through that, I promise you it gets easier the more you do it.
Yeah, and I think again it comes back to like, well, who are we trying to please? We're supposed to be pleasing God. And so his opinion is the most important. And what he tells us is to, again, make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and our inner circle first. So if it's like, I think we got to bring ourselves back to that. Like, who am I trying to please? God? Okay, then let me do, he has given me these people, this house, this car, whatever it is we need to take care of. Let's steward that well. And then again, it's like if he blesses us with extra energy and time, like by all means, go be a blessing to other people. I'm not trying to say like, oh, you should never, no, but it's like, but just make sure that you're stewarding the things that he's given you well first before you look for other things to take care of. And be tuning in with him too. Like where, I think I read a book one time. It was called The Best Yes by Lisa Turkis. I think is her how you
Like
say her last name. Yeah, I probably butchered that, but you guys know who she is. She's pretty popular. And she was talking about like your best yes. Like you have to make sure that you have the time, the energy, and the money before you can say yes to things. So like when I was overcommitting ourselves, and this was back even pre-kids, I was overcommitting. Cam and I was like, we were working, we were doing so much we were basically doing a full-time church job and then full-time jobs, and then also trying to like see our families or go to the gym or do have time for our marriage, which again, like Cam said, we kind of cut that out. But she was like, yeah, kind of run it through the filter of like, do I have time, energy, and money for this whatever I'm being asked to do? And if the answer is yes, then cool. Like it's probably something that God's calling you to do. But if you say no to any one of those things, then it's probably better just to say not the right season for this. And that's a good way to tell people, like if you're worried about just saying like no, be like, you know what, thanks for the opportunity. Something I'd probably love to do in the future. I just don't have the capacity right now. It's just not the right season for me. You can let people down easy if you don't want to be a jerk. Like I'm just like, no, not interested. So you can kind of like get around it where like you won't offend people and they can't. But again, it comes back to, are you trying to please that person or are you trying to please God?
Well, and if we're supposed to emulate the Bible, we read stories constantly of Jesus would go out, and a lot of people love this. Oh, he served. We got to be like Jesus. Okay, he also got the heck away from people. He went up in the middle of nowhere by himself because he knew everybody. People were driving him nuts, and so he wanted to get away. And so we love to sit there and share the story. Oh, well, Jesus walked around and he helped people, and he did, and he's calling us to do this. Well, he also knew when it's time to take a break, when it was time to rest, when it was time to pray, when it was time to just run out into the woods and get off the grid for a little bit. So we love to sit there and just talk about the other side when he was busy, but we don't talk about the times he slowed down. And then Paul talked about this, saying it was better if you're single than if you have the commitment of a marriage, because then you can focus on spending more time serving. So for those that are single, you will naturally have more money, more free time, and so that allows you more service opportunities. For those that are in a marriage commitment, it gets harder because now with marriage, you add kids. And yes, you start to add on a little bit of responsibility, and you need to check those boxes off first. But to piggyback off your point, you said you'll have you're bringing up Lisa Turkhurst, who makes a great point, like, time, money, energy.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I want to add, though, is there has been times where I'm tired, and let's say my neighbor needs something. God will give you that energy to do what he's calling you to do. But he will let you burn out if you're going outside of his will. So a great, just gut check right from the get-go And a practical thing that I've done is, let's say a neighbor approaches me, oh, I have a situation, can you help me out? I check in with Kira real quick because we have 4 kids now, so I can't just disappear for like an hour and help somebody out, or else I'm gonna come home and it's yeah, you're gonna let me have it, right? And so what I do is I check in real quick. Hey, they have this situation. We discuss it real quick, and then if we can handle it, we do it. And it's funny because I know if it was the right thing to do, it works out. Like the kids will behave for you. I'll have the energy to do it, or God will give me some extra energy from somewhere, and we'll pull it through, and it'll be a blessing to somebody else. But then there's so many countless times where I've just said yes out of guilt, shame, etc. And I'll get into it and I'm just mad. I almost get resentful at that person for asking me. So you can sense in your soul like there's just no peace. And so that's your first gut check to that should have been a time you said no. If you're feeling empty, if you feel frustrated, resentment, anger, you should have said no.
Yeah, I like that. And again, I think too, like there's different seasons for different things. So it's like, yeah, right now with a newborn, like, okay, we don't have the capacity we're just trying to keep our marriage and our kids alive right now. So it's like, and then maybe record a podcast if we can and keep our businesses afloat. And like, that's it. So we did have, an instance where someone needed a little bit of help, and Cam checked in with me, and it was fine. And it was a blessing to her, and it was a blessing to us, and it worked out. So it's like, there's some small things here and there, I would say, but like bigger commitments outside, like a continual commitment, something that's going to be reoccurring. I would definitely, those are the big things that you really have to check in with your family and yourself to see if you have the capacity for one-off things here and there. It's like, yeah, you could, we can hopefully squeeze some of those in here or there, but bigger commitments that are going to be like weekly, monthly, whatever. It's like, just make sure that it's going to align with your values and be a good way to spend your time and be beneficial for everybody in the family.
Well, and you've always told me this too, is I was raised once you commit to something, you can't get out. And I think there's some truth to that. Like if you shouldn't just be flaky and just jump out of things. But let's be honest, if you get into something and it's too much and you're starting to feel that anger, resentment, then maybe it's time to reconsider it, right? So do a gut check. So that leads us to the big question. What happens when people don't like your no?
We get to talk about my favorite word. I feel like I've said this in another podcast where I'm like, oh, my favorite B word, and it's not what you think it's going to be.
Oh, goodness.
Boundaries. Yeah, so I think, again, in order to protect like your family's time or peace or resources, sometimes it's necessary to put a boundary up. I think sometimes people think that they have certain rights or opinions when it comes to you and your time. And, unfortunately, if someone can't respect the way that you, like how frequently you want to see them, how much you want to see, what happens when you see them, then, that might be time to put up a boundary. Because going back to what I said before, my main concern right now is my husband and my kids. That's my ministry right now. That's what God's given me. That's where he's put me. I'm in the thick of fostering a healthy relationship and raising kids. So if something outside of that little orbit is causing my family chaos or, is not beneficial to our little orbit, it's kind of we always say, like, sometimes our little orbit, we feel like when we focus on our family, Cam and I are on the same page, we do things a certain way, we have a way of doing things that kind of works for our family. It doesn't work for everybody, works for us, kind of keeps everybody thriving, keeps the vibes high when in our family. And then when something else comes in because somebody can't respect the way that we do things or how we spend our time, this and that, it throws off our little orbit and the vibes go real low. And so therefore, obviously, again, I think we talked about this in the communication episode. It's like, bring things to people's attention, give them a chance, right? Like, express, hey, this is how we do things. This is what I want to do. This is what I don't want to do. But after a few times of having those conversations, if the person can't respond that way, or if they're just making you feel guilty about saying no, or shaming you for saying no, or, well, why? Sorry, like, you don't have to be in a relationship with that person. So,
Well, and there's also temporary boundaries. I think with yeah, and let's go back to the Bible. There's a lot of people that think, "Oh, boundary, you can't do that, right? Like that's not biblical. You're supposed to love. You're supposed to forgive. You're supposed to let everything go and give it to God." And I would say this is the disciples were taught if they went to an area and they were to preach and teach the word of God and they were to get rejected and people would turn on them, they were called to kick the dust off their feet and walk away. And so I think there's a season for people where you can put up maybe they need to be permanent, but for the time being, look at them as a temporary boundary. And you go, okay, just for now, I can't handle what toxicity or negativity or what's going on here. So I'm going to put a temporary wall up, and I'm going to, you can pray for the person. You can, start to process it internally, really kind of grasp your head around what's going on, and then either work towards reconciliation, or you go, you know what, ever since I put this temporary boundary up, this is, it's given me the time to take care of myself, my family properly, so maybe it does need to be something permanent. And if you discern that properly, it'll be an easy decision to make whether it needs to be permanent or not, because that as soon as you kind of put that temporary boundary, it's going to either bless you or it's going to feel like, there's a void there that I need to fix, right?
sometimes feelings are hurt in the process of boundaries, but as long as you're doing it the most respectful way that you can, it'll take me back to that original question that I asked: who am I pleasing, that friend or God? And I just have to do what He's calling me to do and steward what He's given me well. And people may be not happy with that, may not be happy with you, and that's okay. You do not have to make everybody happy. That's the whole point of saying no and boundaries.
Yeah, it's really about how you're handling everything. If
Mm-hmm.
you're going off, going around just pissing people off for the sake of pissing them off,
No.
you've done it to yourself. If you're sitting there understanding that, look, my health and my well-being, my kids' well-being, once I've checked off those boxes, I'm happy to pour into other people. And then you've done that, and then people are getting upset with you. Then that's just life. That's just called living in this 21st century, right?
Yeah, because again, taking care of yourself is also underrated. That's something I preach all the time to moms. I'm like, please take care of yourself so that you can give from a place of genuine love, and like, nobody needs to be faking it. I feel like people know when you're like faking it to make it. And listen, every once in a while, I gotta fake it till I make it. I mean, that's just the reality of life. Sometimes you just have to suck it up and get things done. But if you can be like coming from a place of health and thriving, like, you're just gonna love your people so much better. So
Well,
everybody wins.
that's the benefit of all this is if you follow this, replacing some of your yeses with nos, with putting up these temporary boundaries, then you'll be blessed with extra time to actually get your mental health straight, take care of yourself, to watch that spill over to your kids and your household. And then when you do that, you can start actually saying yes to more things, because now you have a happy household and more members of that household that will step up and do things to care for others because they see the benefit of it. But if I'll throw myself under the bus. Being the dad, if I'm working myself to death and running myself into the ground, then everybody around me is going to look at me and be like, you're just being dumb. And I don't want any part in serving and helping others because you look like a hot disaster, right? They don't see it as helping others is a blessing. Saying yes is a blessing. And yes, there's tons of times where God's going to call you to say yes to things. But if there's ever a time for this message, it's today, because we are moving too fast. And we kind of talked about this in our patience podcast. So if you haven't listened, to give that a listen, and we dive deeper into that topic of just slowing life down and giving yourself time. Like, we actually take time away for us to go to the gym, for us to just self-care. And it's such a lost art because we're too busy saying yes to everybody.
Yeah, but it affects our health. I mean, people are so stressed. They're, I don't know if I should go here with this, but I'll be kind and just say, listen, people are not taking care of their health out there, and it's because they don't have the time or energy to do it. So, yeah,
Yeah,
create
and what
some
kind of
margin.
example does that? I love that you said that. What kind of example does that take for fellow Christians? Or let's put it this way: if you're a non-believer and you watch a bunch of churchgoers and they're just not taking care of their body, they're stressed out of the wazoo,
Yeah,
they're
people are
miserable human
sick.
beings, and you're like, why do I want any part of that? And you know what? I agree with you. There's a lot of times where I've even looked at myself and been like, what am I doing? Well, I don't blame people for not wanting to, they might run away from God based on what I'm presenting to them because I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I'm a mess. And so why we're not teaching people what God's really about. And honestly, it took me so many years. I'd say it was about a 7-year journey, and only the last year or so have I finally seen the fruits of going God's pace and learning to say no, learning to when is it time to just go out into the woods, get off the grid, and get away from everything, get away from the noise. And then when you do that, there's so much more peace. You actually enjoy the company of friendships. You can actually like be a benefit to others, and then that's really what is spoken about in the Bible. That's really the message of God.
Yeah. All right, let's move to our unpopular opinion segment.
All right, you kick that one off.
Yeah, I'll start. So my
Are
unpopular
you gonna
opinion.
do two, or are you doing one?
No, I kind of tied the other one into like what I was talking about before. So this is just my official unpopular opinion.
Oh,
And that is that we are overbooking our kids. And so I feel like there's all this, again, expectation, pressure from society to like be the most, do the most. And so we have our kids like running around like crazy people with their heads chopped off trying to keep up with all these activities. So we tell our kids pick one. So like Callie does soccer. That's enough. Like that's enough of a commitment. Abby picked cheerleading. Like we're not doing multiple things. Like we're not, because again, it's like it's too much. Like they go to school all day. They're exhausted from that. Then they have homework, which don't even get me started about how long the school day is. I'm like, they're freaking like 7 years old. Their brains and their souls can't handle this. But anyway, then they do homework. Then they go to an activity, and it's like, I mean, they're booked up from like 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. It's like they're working longer days than we are.
even Delaney agrees. She's like, that sounds exhausting.
I know, it's just too much. Like it's too much for their brains. Like, and again, it's like, well, then as parents, it's like, when are we spending time with them? Like if they're, doing all these activities, being with everybody else, it's like, when do we get the time with them? So, which is again, I don't think that they want to be doing 1,000,001 activities. I think they just want to be spending time with us. But anyway, that's my unpopular opinion, is that we just overcommit ourselves and we overcommit our kids. And I think that we just need to give them a little bit of space to just be kids and relax, play outside, just have some downtime. And I think that would do wonders for their mental and emotional development and health.
And those last things you listed, if the parents did that and led by example, it helps, right? So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And as the parent, if you're stressed and you're a riddled mess and you're overcommitted, then do you think your kid's going to learn a healthy pace, or do you think that your child is going to learn your pace? And then what kind of health effects is that going to have, down the road, right? So remember, what you do as a parent, your kids are going to have that, and they're going to either inherit that blessing or they're going to inherit that stress and chaos, right? Great point.
What's your unpopular opinion?
So my popular opinion is that, can I throw myself under the bus? That
You've thrown yourself under the bus like 3 times this episode.
Let's throw everybody under the bus. So I'll put it this way. I am the problem of why I can't say no and not other people. And if you're listening, I guess the way to put this is self-reflect. Maybe you are the reason why you're unhealthy. Maybe you're the reason why that you're overcommitted, and it's not other people's faults. So let me flesh that out. You will always have people telling you they need you, and it's never going to ever change. And so you have to put in the work to do things. You can't wait to be healthy for when people stop asking you for help. That's never going to happen. I try to throw my insecurities under the rug and just pray that like people would just leave me alone. I even got to the point where I just like stepped away from like friendships. I stepped away from, Bible studies, groups, etc., in the hopes that I would just kind of disappear off the face of the earth and people would stop asking me. Then it was funny because then it would be like my neighbor, and it like God always found a way to bring people to me because he wanted me to really just work on myself and work on me saying no and work on me, learning that it's not the end of the world if I have to temporarily disappoint somebody. It's not my job to be a people pleaser. So what I'm asking our listeners to do is just take a pause, stop blaming everybody else for your problems, and self-reflect for a second and go, maybe I haven't said no. Maybe I haven't stepped up and just been honest with people. You don't have to be mean. You can just sit there and go, honestly, yeah, I would love to help you. I wish I had the time, but I have this and this and that to do. And so I'm really sorry. Or maybe, there's actually, our old pastor, Ryan Casey, was fantastic at this. He knew people for every situation. So instead of helping everybody with their I know a guy for this, or here, I'll show you. Like, he was great at like sharing the load and delegating. Yes. And so it's not our job to fix everybody's problems. And so just take a second, look in the mirror, and own a little bit of it. And I think that will go a long way in blessing you and your household and those around you.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too. It's like sometimes, like, I used to have this mentality all the time. Well, if I don't do it, then nobody's going to do it, or it's not going to get done, or it's not going to get done right. And it's like, that's a control issue. So that's where I will sometimes overcommit myself, because I'm like, well, I can do this the best, or I can get this done, and nobody else is going to do it. But again, it's not my job to save the world. Like, I just need to steward well what's right in front of me. And also the other thing I was going to say is, like, too, if people like truly care about you and love you, when you express to them, hey, I'm sorry, like, it's just not going to be in my best interest to do this right now because I am exhausted or whatever. Like, if they are like true people, like people that genuinely care and love you, they're going to understand that, and they're not going to give you crap for that. So it's like, sometimes I think putting up those boundaries or like saying no is a good way to like test a not test, but kind of just see, like, is this even a relationship that I want in my life, right? Like, is this even a relationship where we're both looking out for each other and care about each other's well-beings? And if someone can't handle that, then that might just be a sign that, like, okay, maybe this just isn't a relationship I need to have in my life right now. But
yeah, and you might be surprised that people, when they hear your response, they might respect you more, and then two, they might even ask you. I've had this happen to me where they're at, oh, is there anything I can do to help you? And then you just got yourself out of a situation. Then you realize that there was a blessing waiting for you if you just learned to just be honest with people. And so then they're asking me, oh, well, can I do something to help? And now I have an opportunity where my needs can actually be taken care of. So you'll be surprised what will happen and what blessings are waiting for you if you're just willing to be in tune with yourself and discern.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's go after our best yeses. I love that book. That's a good one.
Best yeses or best no's?
Well, it's essentially saying yes to the best things and no to everything else is the point.
So everybody, if you didn't listen to the last half hour, say your best yes, I guess.
Yes. Go for your best yes and say
it's so
no.
contradictory to what we've been saying the whole time.
It's just another way of saying it. Say no to things that don't matter or that you're not called to, and say yes to what God is calling you to do. All right. Well, that's it for today, and we hope you guys enjoyed. You can follow us at Living Life with the Rogers Family. I check DMs over there, and we will catch you guys on the next episode.
All right. Thanks for listening.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to Living Life with the Rogers with Cameron and Kira.
You can find us over on Instagram at Living Life with the Rogers Family. We love to post on there, and we will check in on DMs and comments and get back to you guys if you have any questions. And if you would like to hear future episodes, make sure you follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See ya.